I love Hyperdimension Neptunia. It's my favorite series of all time, and I've been attached to it for half a decade's worth of time. From its characters, to its world design, to the music, to the writing, there's a lot that I enjoy from this niche anime-styled franchise. In those 5 years, I've seen and heard many opinions come from the community regarding these same points of discussion. However, one topic that I don't see talked about too much is the writing of the characters themselves, and, in particular, the writing of my favorite character of all time, Neptune. I've seen quite a lot of people write her off on the simple basis of, she's a funny meta girl. But, what if I told you that this funny meta girl is actually one of the most thoughtfully written characters in the series that most people tend to overlook? Perhaps even you have dismissed her at first, believing there wasn't much interest in her character beyond being meta. Personally speaking, in genres such as a JRPG or a visual novel, the writing is a very big part of whether or not I'll enjoy it, especially because both genres put such a big emphasis on the characters in writing. Series such as Ace Attorney, Paper Mario, the Persona series, and, of course, Hyperdimension Neptunia are all great examples of what exactly I'm talking about. Each of these series has great writing. They use their settings to great effect, and provide the players with a sense of well-paced world building as well as an exploration of the characters that inhabit the world. Hyperdimension Neptunia, in particular, puts a great spotlight on the characters because it understands its audience and tries to make the most of it in order to provide an enjoyable experience. And, as such, it really tries to sell you on each of these characters' personalities, putting them front and center to make sure they're that much more memorable. From the brash but caring Noir, to the determined and thunderous Uzume, to the shy but creatively ambitious Nepgear, each character leaves an impression on you that gives you an understanding as to why some of them are as beloved as they are. As you might expect, this applies to Neptune as well, being the face of the series and all, as well as being featured in literally every single game in the series. But the impressions I've seen from the community regarding Neptune seem to be very basic and, as I stated before, focused on Neptune's shtick of being meta. In this video, I want to make an argument as to why she is one of the most well-written characters in the series, and try to sway people's opinions of her beyond what I've described. Now, before you dismiss me as biased, because yes, I am talking about my favorite character of all time and my favorite series of all time, please hear me out. This is a topic I've really enjoyed discussing with others before, and I want to share my perspective with you. Additionally, if you're new to the series, then I recommend, but not outright demand, that you put a pin in this video and try to become more familiar with the source material first. I don't say that as a means to try and push you away or to make you think you aren't capable of watching the video though. And if you're someone unfamiliar with the series, then by all means, watch through this video to the end. Maybe you could learn a new thing or two about the series that you never knew before, or if you're someone who doesn't know what the series is at all, then hopefully this video will interest you in giving it a shot. One last thing. I want to make a very important distinction. I'm not talking about Purple Heart, the transformed state of Neptune. I'm talking about Neptune, her human form. I know they're the same person at the end of the day, but the writers are very clearly trying to make them distinct in their personalities. More focus is put on Neptune in terms of jokes and lighthearted writing, whilst more focus is put on Purple Heart in terms of serious, high-stakes scenes that require more care and a more grounded tone. So, please keep this in mind when you're watching the video. I am only going to be talking about Neptune. Anyways, with all that said, it's time to move on to the main topic of this video. Let's dive into why Neptune is a better written character than you think. Alright, before I get into the meat and potatoes of this video, I want to explain Neptune's personality on a surface level to set a sort of baseline for me to build upon as the video progresses. Keep this in mind, because this is supposed to be what someone would think she acts like all the time at a cursory glance, not how she actually is if you take a closer look at it. After all, that's what the video is for. So, to start, Neptune is the guardian goddess of Planet Neptune, which is one of the 4 nations in the world of game industry, the series' main setting. She's a playful girl who is extremely hyperactive and often has a smile on her face regardless of the situation she may or may not be facing at the moment. She acts like a bit of a ditz sometimes, which either gets her into trouble and or makes her look like a complete idiot. Moments such as misremembering phrases or blurting out quite literally anything that's on her mind for no discernible reason. Oh, and did I mention she loves pudding? Like, really loves pudding? Seriously, you can make a classic box trap with pudding as the bait and it'd work perfectly. On top of this, Neptune also acts a bit childish. She's no stranger to giving her friends innocuous nicknames. Iffy, or Aichan in Japanese, to IF, her childhood friend, or Pluti, or Pururun in Japanese, for Plutia, a goddess of planet Neptune she meets in another dimension. Not even the villains are spared from her playful mockery, most notably Arfor, a recurring villain within the franchise, whom Neptune calls an assortment of provocative nicknames such as Arbor, Hagflar, or in some extreme cases, entirely different words like Eggplant Lady or Star-Lord, with all of it being purely intentional on Neptune's part, of course. These aspects of her personality, from what I've seen, are a bit of a point of contention for those invested in the series. On one hand, a lot of fans adore her for her quirky nature and her meta jokes. She's super endearing, and in fact, it's a big reason why she constantly ranks so highly in the series' popularity polls. On the other hand, some might not like her, or don't find her as appealing as others do. They might find her constant upbeatness to be annoying, or they simply believe that she lacks the more upfront and apparent writing qualities that other characters have, like Nepgear, goddess candidate of planet Neptune and Neptune's younger sister, Noir, the guardian goddess of last station and Neptune's best friend, Uzume, one of her predecessors, or Blonde, the guardian goddess of Louis and one of Neptune's friends, leaving Neptune as no more than a secondary character that's just there to be there. But then, get to the big game industry and elephant in the room that nobody likes to talk about.
Oh my god!
Ugh. Yep, we gotta talk about Victory. Another big reason why some might not like Neptune. Neptune's characterization in Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory, or Rebirth 3, is, for lack of a better term, underwhelming. But, to provide some background, Hyperdimension Neptunia Victory was released in 2012, almost exactly a year after the previous game, Hyperdimension Neptunia Mark II was released. It served as a direct sequel to Mark II, detailing the hijinks that Neptune and company go through sometime after Mark II. Following the criticisms brought upon by the way Mark II was written, in particular, making Nepgear the main character instead of Neptune, the writers decided to take a different turn in regards to the writing, opting to keep things lighthearted and joke-centric rather than the more serious and, occasionally, depressing tone of Mark II before it. And, with this change in tone, so too did the characters change. But this tonal shift did come at a cost. You know everything I said about Neptune's childish behavior a few minutes ago? Yeah, just take all of that, dial it up to 11, and then strip pretty much everything else about Neptune that makes her such an interesting character, and you get her portrayal in Victory. In Victory, Neptune is a lot more whiny, selfish, and outright rude to others at times, including her own sister. She frequently throws tantrums when things don't go her way, and will uncharacteristically take extreme measures, such as allowing Iris Heart, Plutia's transformed state, to torture Nepgear after she unwillingly defects to Vert's side. Even in the non-canon good ending, she still displays this attitude to an extent, refusing to help Nepgear return home after she becomes trapped in the Ultra Dimension, simply because she wants to sleep, something equally out of character. And as a rotten cherry on top, Neptune barely ever apologizes for any missteps she takes, outside of when she is quite literally peer-pressured into doing so. Victory's writing and mishandling of its characters is the main reason why some fans view Neptune in a negative light. Doubly so because Victory is one of the most well-known and talked about games within this franchise, for better or for worse. The remake of Victory, Rebirth 3, didn't do much to change the way Neptune was written either. Despite the script being updated through a slight retranslation, Neptune's characterization stayed mostly the same, and it leads to her feeling more like a nuisance rather than a character you'd come to like as the game goes on. Neptune, in Victory, is a poorly written character. She is, by all means, heavily flawed, and has some of the most disappointing and weakest writing that the main series has seen up to this point. To make one thing clear, I understand that the developers took this step in changing the overall tone of the game because of how the reception towards Mark II was a bit mixed in the writing department. However, it's also important to acknowledge that even if the shift in tone was a deliberate choice, that doesn't preclude the tonal shift from being executed in an unsatisfactory way. That's exactly what's going on in Victory. The writers may have tried to make this super lighthearted tone work, but in the end, it simply didn't. After all, there's a reason why they haven't gone back to this level of casual writing. With all this said though, you might be thinking, if I'm talking about Neptune's personality and writing so negatively, why is it that she's a better written character than at first glance? After all, one of her most prominent and well-known appearances in the franchise characterizes her so unpleasantly. Well, the answer to that, dear viewer, lies 3 years in the future from Victory's release date, Megadimension Neptunia V2. With some fans criticizing the way Neptune was portrayed in Victory, it was only a matter of time until this was realized by the writers over at Compile Heart and sent the message that our little pink-haired pudding lover needed to be changed in a positive manner. And, thankfully, they did just that when Megadimension Neptunia V2 rolled around in 2015 for Japan and in 2016 for the rest of the world.